What if the most dangerous dinosaurs on Earth are only the beginning of the nightmare? Today, we'll break down the full story, hidden details, and mind blowing facts of Jurassic World. Rebirth, the most fans completely missed. Oh, you're watching Reviews Wala? So hit that like button and let's jump right into the adventure. Jurassic World Rebirth is a 2025 American sci fi action movie directed by Gareth Edwards and written by David Koepp. It's the fourth movie in the Jurassic World series and the seventh movie in the Jurassic Park franchise. The movie stars Scarlett Johansson, Mahershala Ali, Jonathan Bailey, Rupert Friend, Manuel Garcia Rulfo, and Ed Skrein. In this story, dinosaurs that were brought back from extinction can only survive near the Earth's equator because it's the last place with the right climate for them. A skilled team heads to an old island research facility where three massive dinosaur species are still alive. Their mission is to collect DNA samples that could help create a life saving treatment for heart disease. Along the way, they rescue a family whose boat was destroyed at sea. But after everyone gets stranded on the dangerous island, they have to fight for their lives while trying to escape hungry dinosaurs and survive one deadly situation after another. Work on the movie started not long after Jurassic World Dominion came out in 2022. Executive producer Steven Spielberg wanted to bring the franchise in a fresh direction, so he asked David Kopp to help create the next chapter. Kopp already knew the Jurassic universe really well because he co wrote the original Jurassic Park in 1993 and wrote The Lost World, Jurassic Park in 1997. News about the new movie first came out in January 2024. Just 1 month later, Gareth Edwards signed on as the director, and the casting process started soon after. Filming took place between June and September 2024 in Thailand, Malta, and the United Kingdom. The movie had a huge production budget of around $180 million to $225 million, allowing the filmmakers to create massive action scenes, realistic dinosaur effects, and breathtaking locations. Jurassic World Rebirth had its world premiere on June 17, 2025, at the Odeon Lux Leicester Square in London. It was then released in theaters across the United States and Canada on July 2, 2025 by Universal Pictures. The movie got mixed reactions from critics. While some reviewers had complaints, many felt it was a big step up from the last few Jurassic movies because of its exciting action, suspense, and impressive visual effects. It was also a huge success at the box office, earning more than $872 million worldwide, making it one of the biggest movies of 2025. At the 98th Academy Awards, the film received a nomination for Best Visual Effects, becoming the first movie in the Jurassic Park franchise since The Lost World. Jurassic Park to earn an Oscar nomination. Because of its strong performance and popularity, a sequel is already being developed. Casting Scarlett Johansson as Zora Bennett, Scarlett Johansson brings a commanding presence to Jurassic World. Rebirth as Zora Bennett, the covert operations expert leading the high stakes expedition to Ile Saint Hubert. Zora is portrayed as a seasoned mercenary with a complex past, blending tactical precision with an emerging moral compass that drives much of the film's emotional undercurrent. Her character serves as the narrative anchor, a gun for hire tasked with extracting biomaterial samples from massive dinosaurs for pharmaceutical purposes while navigating the chaos of dinosaur encounters and ethical dilemmas. Johansson's casting was a pivotal move for the franchise, signaling a fresh direction after the Chris Pratt and Bryce Dallas Howard era. Her history with action heavy roles, particularly as Natasha Romanoff Sleshna Black Widow in the Marvel Cinematic Universe, equipped her well for the physical demands of the part. Reports indicate that the character was originally conceived with a more gender neutral approach, but Johansson's involvement shaped Zora into a layered figure with rich past and private pain. Director Gareth Edwards noted how Johansson influenced the role, emphasizing authenticity in portraying someone who had lived that life. This input allowed Zora to evolve beyond a standard action lead into a character at a personal turning point, ready to pivot toward greater purpose by the film's end. In performance, Johansson delivers a grounded intensity. Early sequences showcase her recruiting team members in Suriname with calculated efficiency, establishing her as a no nonsense leader. As the mission unravels, With Mosasaurus attacks, Spinosaurus ambushes, and the rescue of the Delgado family, Zora's arc deepens. She balances high octane stunt work, including rappelling into Quetzalcoatlus nests and evading mutodons in underground tunnels with quieter moments of reflection. Her chemistry with co stars, particularly Jonathan Bailey's Dr. Henry Loomis, highlights themes of trust and redemption. By the climax, as Zora chooses to make the biomaterial open source rather than proprietary, Johansson conveys a subtle shift from self preservation to altruism. Critics and audiences noted Johansson's ability to carry the film's emotional weight amid spectacle. Her portrayal echoes classic Jurassic leads like Alan Grant or Ellie Sattler in Scientific Curiosity, but infuses it with a modern, battle hardened edge. Johansson's preparation reportedly included extensive stunt training and consultations on covert ops tactics, lending credibility to Zora's resourcefulness. Scenes where she uses modified dart guns on Titanosaurus or coordinates under fire demonstrate her physical commitment. Off screen, her interviews revealed excitement about joining a franchise with such cultural impact, often referencing childhood memories of the original Jurassic Park. This personal connection translated to a performance that felt invested rather than contractual. The role also allowed Johansson to explore action in a new context. Unlike the sleek espionage of Black Widow, Zora operates in a raw jungle environment where technology fails and instincts rule. This contrast brought freshness to her action repertoire. Her interactions with Mahershala Ali's Duncan Kincaid add layers of professional respect and subtle tension, while family dynamics with the Delgados force her to confront the mission's human cost. Overall, Johansson's Zora Bennett stands as a strong evolution for female leads in the series, blending capability with vulnerability. Mahershala Ali as Duncan Kincaid. Mahershala Ali joins the ensemble as Duncan Kincaid, Zora's longtime associate and the expedition's team leader. Duncan provides tactical oversight and a steady hand amid escalating dangers. His background as a reliable operator complements Zora's expertise, creating a dynamic duo that anchors the mercenary team. Ali's Oscar winning pedigree from Moonlight and Green Book brings gravitas and nuance, preventing the character from becoming a generic tough guy. Ali's casting added significant star power and depth. His ability to convey quiet authority shines in recruitment scenes and during crises, such as the Mosasaurus blood sample collection or the Spinosaurus assault that claims team members. Duncan's loyalty to Zora is tested when pharmaceutical representative Martin Krebs prioritizes the mission over lives, forcing moral choices. Ali portrays this internal conflict with restraint, subtle facial expressions, and measured dialogue that speak volumes. His survival in the finale, distracting the Distortus Rex with a flare to allow the group's escape, encapsulates his sacrificial role. Interviews with Ali highlighted his appreciation for the film's return to isolated, adventure focused storytelling. He drew parallels between Duncan's experiences and real world themes of corporate exploitation versus human survival. Physically, Ali committed to the rigors of location, shooting in Thailand and Malta, handling action sequences that involved water work and creature interactions. His chemistry with Johansson feels earned, rooted in implied shared history that adds emotional texture without overt exposition. Ali's performance elevates supporting elements, while action dominates moments of reflection, discussing the ethics of exploiting dinosaur DNA for heart disease treatments. Allow him to infuse Duncan with philosophical undertones. This aligns with the franchise's tradition of blending spectacle with scientific and moral inquiry. Reviewers praised Ali for avoiding scene chewing, instead, delivering a grounded portrayal that humanizes the team's high risk operation. His presence ensures the mercenary group feels professional and credible, heightening stakes when members like Bobby Atwater and Nina perish. Jonathan Bailey as Dr. Henry Loomis. Jonathan Bailey portrays Dr. Henry Loomis, the paleontologist collaborating with Zora's team to identify and extract viable samples. Loomis represents the scientific perspective, bridging the gap between corporate interests and genuine wonder at prehistoric life. Bailey, known for Bridgerton and theatrical work, brings intellectual charisma and warmth that contrasts the hardened operatives. Bailey's involvement marked a notable expansion into blockbuster territory, His casting was celebrated for injecting fresh energy. Loomis's enthusiasm for dinosaurs echoes classic paleontologists but updates it with contemporary awareness of genetic ethics. Key scenes include rappelling into caves for Quetzalcoatlus amniotic fluid and analyzing Titanosaurus herds. Bailey excels in conveying awe and terror, particularly during close encounters that test his academic background against survival instincts. His dynamic with Johansson forms the film's emotional core. Initial professional respect evolves into mutual reliance, sensual affection, culminating in their decision to democratize the samples. Bailey's delivery of monologues, some inspired by Michael Crichton's novels, adds intellectual weight, discussing dinosaur lifespans and heart disease parallels. His oral fidget mannerisms, as noted in interviews, reveal character quirks that humanize Loomis. Preparation involved paleontology research and physical training. Bailey's performance balances vulnerability with resilience, making Loomis relatable. Critics highlighted his ability to hold scenes without CGI reliance, using body language during dinosaur pursuits. This contributes to the film's praised return to character driven tension. Rupert Friend as Martin Krebs. Rupert Friend plays Martin Krebs, the pharmaceutical executive, driving the mission's secrecy and moral ambiguity. Krebs embodies corporate opportunism, clashing with the team's growing conscience. Friend's portrayal is nuanced, charming yet menacing, making him an effective antagonist within the group. Friend's casting brought understated menace. Krebs's decisions, like preventing rescues or threatening the group with a handgun, escalate conflicts. His demise at the jaws of the Distortus Rex delivers Scarlett Johansson as Zora Bennett. Scarlett Johansson brings a commanding presence to Jurassic World. Rebirth as Zora Bennett, the covert operations expert leading the high stakes expedition to Ile Saint Hubert. Zora is portrayed as a seasoned mercenary with a complex past, blending tactical precision with an emerging moral compass that drives much of the film's emotional undercurrent. Her character serves as the narrative anchor, a gun for hire tasked with extracting biomaterial samples from massive dinosaurs for pharmaceutical purposes while navigating the chaos of dinosaur encounters and ethical dilemmas. Johansson's casting was a pivotal move for the franchise, signaling a fresh direction after the Chris Pratt and Bryce Dallas Howard era. Her history with action heavy roles, particularly as Natasha Romanoff, Black Widow in the Marvel Cinematic Universe, equipped her well for the physical demands of the part. Reports indicate that the character was originally conceived with a more gender neutral approach, but Johansson's involvement shaped Zora into a layered figure with rich past and private pain. Director Gareth Edwards noted how Johansson influenced the role, emphasizing authenticity in portraying someone who had lived that life. This input allowed Zora to evolve beyond a standard action lead into a character at a personal turning point, ready to pivot toward greater purpose by the film's end. In performance, Johansson delivers a grounded intensity. Early sequences showcase her recruiting team members in Suriname with calculated efficiency, establishing her as a no nonsense leader. As the mission unravels, with Mosasaurus attacks, Spinosaurus ambushes, and the rescue of the Delgado family, Zora's arc deepens. She balances high octane stunt work, including rappelling into Quetzalcoatlus' nest and evading mutadons in underground tunnels, with quieter moments of reflection. Her chemistry with co stars, particularly Jonathan Bailey's Dr. Henry Loomis, highlights themes of trust and redemption. By the climax, as Zora chooses to make the biomaterial open source rather than proprietary, Johansson conveys a subtle shift from self preservation to altruism. Critics and audiences noted Johansson's ability to carry the film's emotional weight amid spectacle. Her portrayal echoes classic Jurassic leads like Alan Grant or Ellie Sattler in Scientific Curiosity, but infuses it with a modern, battle hardened edge. Johansson's preparation reportedly included extensive stunt training and consultations on covert ops tactics, lending credibility to Zora's resourcefulness. Scenes where she uses modified dart guns on Titanosaurus or coordinates under fire demonstrate her physical commitment. Off screen, her interviews revealed excitement about joining a franchise with such cultural impact, often referencing childhood memories of the original Jurassic Park. This personal connection translated to a performance that felt invested rather than contractual. The role also allowed Johansson to explore action in a new context. Unlike the sleek espionage of Black Widow, Zora operates in a raw jungle environment where technology fails and instincts rule. This contrast brought freshness to her action repertoire. Her interactions with Mahershala Ali's Duncan Kincaid add layers of professional respect and subtle tension, while family dynamics with the Delgados force her to confront the mission's human cost. Overall, Johansson's Zora Bennett stands as a strong evolution for female leads in the series, blending capability with vulnerability. Mahershala Ali as Duncan Kincaid. Mahershala Ali joins the ensemble as Duncan Kincaid, Zora's longtime associate and the expedition's team leader. Duncan provides tactical oversight and a steady hand amid escalating dangers. His background as a reliable operator complements Zora's expertise, creating a dynamic duo that anchors the mercenary team. Ali's Oscar winning pedigree from Moonlight and Green Book brings gravitas and nuance, preventing the character from becoming a generic tough guy. Ali's casting added significant star power and depth. His ability to convey quiet authority shines in recruitment scenes and during crises, such as the Moses blood sample collection or the Spinosaurus assault that claims team members. Duncan's loyalty to Zora is tested when pharmaceutical representative Martin Krebs prioritizes the mission over lives, forcing moral choices. Ali portrays this internal conflict with restraint, subtle facial expressions, and measured dialogue that speak volumes. His survival in the finale, distracting the Distortus Rex with a flare to allow the group's escape, encapsulates his sacrificial role. Interviews with Ali highlighted his appreciation for the film's return to isolated, adventure focused storytelling. He drew parallels between Duncan's experiences and real world themes of corporate exploitation versus human survival. Physically, Ali committed to the rigors of location, shooting in Thailand and Malta, handling action sequences that involved water work and creature interactions. His chemistry with Johansson feels earned, rooted in implied shared history that adds emotional texture without overt exposition. Ali's performance elevates supporting elements, while action dominates moments of reflection, discussing the ethics of exploiting dinosaur DNA for heart disease treatments, allow him to infuse Duncan with philosophical undertones. This aligns with the franchise's tradition of blending spectacle with scientific and moral inquiry. Reviewers praised Ali for avoiding scenery chewing, instead, delivering a grounded portrayal that humanizes the team's high risk operation. His presence ensures the mercenary group feels professional and credible, heightening stakes when members like Bobby Atwater and Nina perish. Jonathan Bailey as Dr. Henry Loomis. Jonathan Bailey portrays Dr. Henry Loomis, the paleontologist collaborating with Zora's team to identify and extract viable samples. Loomis represents the scientific perspective, bridging the gap between corporate interests and genuine wonder at prehistoric life. Bailey, known for Bridgerton and theatrical work, brings intellectual charisma and warmth that contrasts the hardened operatives. Bailey's involvement marked a notable expansion into blockbuster territory. His casting was celebrated for injecting fresh energy. Loomis's enthusiasm for dinosaurs echoes classic paleontologists but updates it with contemporary awareness of genetic ethics. Key scenes include rappelling into caves for Quetzalcoatlus amniotic fluid and analyzing Titanosaurus herds. Bailey excels in conveying awe and terror, particularly during close encounters that test his academic background against survival instincts. His dynamic with Johansson forms the film's emotional core. Initial professional respect evolves into mutual reliance and subtle affection, culminating in their decision to democratize the samples. Bailey's delivery of monologues, some inspired by Michael Crichton's novels, adds intellectual weight discussing dinosaur lifespans and heart disease parallels. His oral fidget mannerisms, as noted in interviews, reveal character quirks that humanize Loomis. Preparation involved paleontology research and physical training. Bailey's performance balances vulnerability with resilience, making Loomis relatable. Critics highlighted his ability to hold scenes without CGI reliance, using body language during dinosaur pursuits. This contributes to the film's praised returned to character-driven tension. Rupert Friend as Martin Krebs. Rupert Friend plays Martin Krebs, the pharmaceutical executive driving the mission's secrecy and moral ambiguity. Krebs embodies corporate opportunism, clashing with the team's growing conscience. Friend's portrayal is nuanced, charming yet menacing, making him an effective antagonist within the group. Friend's casting brought understated menace. Krebs' decisions, like preventing rescues or threatening the group with a handgun, escalate conflicts. His demise at the jaws of the Distortus Rex delivers poetic justice. Friend layers the role with corporate detachment that crumbles under pressure, adding depth to themes of exploitation. Manuel Garcia Rulfo as Ruben Delgado. Manuel Garcia Rulfo portrays Ruben Delgado, the shipwrecked father, protecting his daughters, Teresa and Isabella, alongside Teresa's boyfriend Xavier. Ruben grounds the civilian perspective, emphasizing family stakes. Garcia Rulfo's everyman charm makes the Delgados sympathetic, contrasting the professional team. His arc involves raft escapes, T Rex chases, and reunions at the Indian complex. Garcia Rulfo conveys paternal determination effectively with standout moments of quiet heroism. His casting diversified the ensemble and highlighted universal survival themes. Ed Screen as Bobby Atwater. Ed Screen appears as Bobby Atwater, a security expert on Zora's team. His role provides muscle and early tension, ending tragically in a Spinosaurus attack. Screen's physicality suits the part, adding credibility to action beats. David Iacono as Xavier Dobbs. David Iacono plays Xavier Dobbs, Teresa's boyfriend caught in the family ordeal. Iacono brings youthful energy to rescue sequences and survival struggles. Representing younger audience connection, Luna Blaze as Teresa Delgado. Luna Blaze as Teresa Delgado, Ruben's eldest daughter, showcases resilience after falling overboard and navigating island horrors. Blaze's performance captures teenage determination and growth. Audrina Miranda as Isabella Delgado. Audrina Miranda portrays Isabella, the youngest Delgado, whose adoption of a baby Aquilops named Dolores adds heart. Miranda's innocence contrasts dangers, delivering tender moments amid chaos. Supporting cast Bashir Sylvain as Leclerc and Philippine Welge as Nina Bashir Sylvain's Leclerc, the French speaking maritime pilot, and Philippine Welge's Nina contribute team dynamics before their deaths advance the plot. Their performances enrich group interactions. The casting of Jurassic World Rebirth excels in blending established stars with emerging talent, creating a cohesive ensemble that supports the story's blend of action, science, and family drama. Each actor's contribution strengthens the film's return to roots while forging new paths. Johansson, Ali, and Bailey form a formidable core, supported by Garcia Rulfo's familial warmth and Friend's antagonism. Newer faces like Iacono, Blaze, and Miranda inject vitality. This diverse assembly helped the film achieve commercial success and critical appreciation for character focus. Expanding further on production context, the casting process prioritized actors capable of handling practical effects and location demands in Thailand, Malta, and the UK. Edwards sought performers who could embody realism in fantastical settings. Johansson's star power drew attention, while Ali and Bailey added awards, prestige, and charm. Supporting roles were filled to reflect global appeal, enhancing immersion. In depth analysis of Johansson's influence reveals collaborative script adjustments for authenticity. Her action sequences, coordinated with stunt teams, set benchmarks for intensity. Bailey's paleontological input informed Loomis's expertise, grounding science. Ali's leadership presence unified team scenes. The Delgado's family unit, led by Garcia Rulfo, humanized stakes, echoing original film's everyman elements. Performance highlights include ensemble chemistry during raft sequences and engine complex confrontations. Visual effects integration amplified actors' reactions, but raw emoting carried emotional beats. The open source resolution reflects collective arcs, symbolizing unity. Salaries and star commitments underscored investment in quality casting. Production development and pre production. The roots of Jurassic World Rebirth trace back to the years immediately following the release of Jurassic World Dominion in 2022, when Steven Spielberg, acting as an executive producer on the franchise, decided the series needed a fresh direction rather than a straightforward continuation of the Jurassic World trilogy storyline. Spielberg had a long standing relationship with screenwriter David Koepp, who had co written the original 1993 Jurassic Park alongside Michael Crichton and had gone on to write the sole screenplay credit for its 1997 sequel, The Lost World Jurassic Park. It was natural then that Spielberg would turn to Kopp once again when he began contemplating what a new chapter in the dinosaur saga might look like. Kopp's history with the franchise, however, was complicated. For years, he had turned down invitations to return to write further Jurassic Park films, believing that he had already said what he wanted to say about the material and did not want to force new ideas simply for the sake of another installment. He remained loosely connected to the franchise in an advisory capacity over the following decades, occasionally weighing in when subsequent films were in development, and he ultimately performed uncredited screenwriting work on Dominion without receiving a formal credit for it. Despite this history of reluctance, when Spielberg approached him this time with the outline of an idea, something clicked. Kopp has said that what ultimately convinced him to take on the project was learning just how personally invested and hands on Spielberg intended to be throughout the writing process. Once Kopp understood that this would not be a film he was simply hired to service from a distance, but one where he would be working in close creative partnership with Spielberg himself, he agreed to come aboard. It's worth noting that Colin Trevorrow, who had spent nearly a decade shepherding the Jurassic World trilogy as both director and co writer, was not involved in the new project. Trevorrow had previously indicated that he did not expect to return for another entry in the series, except perhaps in some advisory role, and in the end, he had no involvement whatsoever with Rebirth, marking a clean handoff to an entirely new creative team. Once Coeb signed on, he and Spielberg spent roughly 6 months developing the screenplay together, trading ideas back and forth in an effort to recapture the tone of the original Jurassic Park trilogy and particularly the atmosphere of the very first film. Cobb has explained that the pair made an early decision that since both the original trilogy and the Jurassic World trilogy had each told complete self contained stories, there was no obligation to tie the new film to established characters or locations. Instead, they opted to build an entirely new cast of characters and set the action in a brand new part of the world, unburdened by continuity requirements from the six films that preceded it. This freedom also extended to a shift in the fundamental premise of the franchise. Quep wanted to move away from the concept central to the second and third Jurassic World films of dinosaurs living freely among human populations across the globe. He felt that idea had already been explored about as thoroughly as it could be, and that continuing to mine, it would only invite diminishing returns. Instead, Rebirth would return to something closer to the original premise. Humans venturing into an environment controlled by dinosaurs rather than the reverse. Kopp has described finding this narrowing of scope liberating rather than restrictive, noting that once the dinosaurs are confined to one place, the story can go anywhere it wants in terms of set pieces without the burden of servicing a globe spanning ensemble, a problem he felt had made the three Jurassic World films increasingly unwieldy to write. With the setting narrowed down conceptually, Coeb and Spielberg turned their attention to devising a reason for characters to seek out a hidden island facility in the first place. Coeb has recounted that in doing research for the story, he discovered that some of the largest prehistoric creatures were believed to have had unusually long lifespans, thanks to a remarkably low incidence of heart disease. Given that heart disease remains the leading cause of death among humans, this became the seed of the film's plot, a pharmaceutical breakthrough that could be derived from dinosaur DNA to treat cardiovascular illness. Ben Lamb, co founder of the de extinction company Colossal Biosciences, later commented publicly that he felt this premise held up to scrutiny, suggesting that many endangered or extinct species may indeed harbor genetic material relevant to modern medicine. The idea of introducing deliberately mutated, monstrous dinosaurs into the story emerged from a desire to reckon with the genetic experimentation depicted in earlier Jurassic World films. Kopp has said that he and Spielberg reasoned that if InGen and its successors had been engaged in years of hybridization efforts, it stood to reason that not every experiment could have gone smoothly, and that some of those failed efforts would still be locked away somewhere. Early in the writing process, Coep had also planned a more prominent role for the character Bobby Atwater, originally intending for him to eventually team up with the antagonist, Martin Krebs, and betray the rest of the expedition, though this idea did not survive into the final version of the script. Before beginning to write in earnest, Coep revisited all six of the preceding films in the franchise to refresh his sense of its history and tone. He also reread Michael Crichton's original Jurassic Park novels for the first time in nearly 3 decades, mining them for concepts and moments that had never made it to the screen. Notably, Rebirth incorporates a sequence lifted directly from the first novel, but omitted from its 1993 film adaptation, in which characters must escape a Tyrannosaurus Rex while stranded on a raft in open water. The film also draws on a monologue delivered by the character Henry Loomis in the novel, and even folds in a piece of unused dialogue that Cobb had originally written decades earlier for the character Ian Malcolm during an early draft of the first Jurassic Park screenplay. Although dinosaurs were, of course, the one non negotiable element of any new script, Cobb otherwise imposed a private set of guiding principles on himself while writing. Among these self imposed rules were commitments to keep the science in the film reasonably grounded, to avoid retconning any events established in the previous six films, and to ensure that the script contained a meaningful amount of humor alongside its more frightening elements. He also made a conscious effort to portray the ordinary, non mutated dinosaurs in the film as animals acting on instinct rather than as movie monsters, framing their aggression as motivated by hunger or territorial defense rather than malice. By September 2023, Quep had begun writing the screenplay in full, and he delivered a completed draft roughly 3 months later. Producers Frank Marshall and Patrick Crowley, both veterans of the Jurassic World trilogy, returned to produce the new film as well, though they were reportedly unaware that Spielberg had already been quietly developing the project with Coep until that first draft was handed in. With the release date already being targeted for mid 2025, the producers were initially taken aback by how little time remained for production, though they soon concluded that the compressed schedule was workable. Public confirmation that a new Jurassic World film was in the works came in late January 2024 when it was reported that Universal Pictures had a new installment in development. As with the Jurassic World trilogy, Marshall and Crowley would produce through their banner the Kennedy Marshall Company, while Spielberg would executive produce through Amblin Entertainment. At the time of this announcement, development had already been underway for some time, with Cobb having produced multiple drafts of the screenplay. The producing team had also begun pre production work of their own, including early dinosaur design concepts, which meant that whoever was eventually hired to direct the film would have comparatively limited room to reshape the project creatively. Reports at the time characterized the directing job as being closer to an execution focused position than a traditional auteur role, reflecting the producer's desire for tighter creative control than had been exercised on Dominion, a film that had been met with largely unfavorable reviews. Before Gareth Edwards was brought on board, at least two other filmmakers were connected to the project. David Leitch, who had previously worked as a second unit director on the first Jurassic World film, was briefly in talks to direct in early February 2024, but those negotiations collapsed within a matter of days, reportedly, because the project's advanced state of development left too little room for him to shape it creatively. Around the same period, Edgar Wright was also offered the chance to direct, but chose instead to pursue his long gestating passion project. The 2025 film, The Running Man Gareth Edwards, was announced as director later in February 2024. He was selected in large part because of the visual sensibility he had demonstrated in his earlier work, which the producers felt suited the Jurassic World franchise particularly well, along with his considerable experience working with computer generated imagery. Spielberg was reportedly a fan of Edwards' 2014 film Godzilla, and Edwards, for his part, was a devoted admirer of the original Jurassic Park, creating a mutual enthusiasm that helped smooth his path onto the project. At the time he was approached, Edwards had just finished making The Creator 2023 and was intending to step away from studio filmmaking for a while to focus on more personal projects. He has said that the Jurassic World offer was the rare kind of opportunity that would make him drop everything immediately, and he described feeling creatively depleted after finishing The Creator, initially hoping that reading Coep's script would give him a good excuse to turn the job down. Instead, he found himself won over by the material. After meeting first with Marshall and then with Spielberg to discuss the project and any potential changes, Edwards was formally hired as director. He has noted that he had less than a year and a half to complete a film that would typically take around 2.5 years to produce, and that he floated the idea of pushing back the release date early on, only to have the suggestion turned down immediately. He credited the strength of Cobb's script with making the accelerated schedule feel manageable, recalling that everyone involved kept pointing to the draft as exactly what they wanted, which made the whole process surprisingly smooth. Edwards aimed to honor the balance that Cobb had struck in the script between comedy and horror, while leaning further into the horror elements than any previous Jurassic World film had attempted. Cobb encouraged Edwards to suggest changes to the material as he saw fit, and Edwards did make several notable alterations during pre production. One example involved a sequence built around a Quetzalcoatlus nest, originally written to take place on an open cliffside, which Edwards relocated to the interior of an abandoned ancient temple. He also changed the settings of a sequence at a roadside gas station convenience store, which had originally been envisioned in a different location before Edwards revised it. The film marked the first entry in the franchise to feature no returning actors from any of the previous six installments, a deliberate choice reflecting the desire for an entirely fresh ensemble. Casting got underway in March 2024 and continued for roughly the following 3 months. Several actors were reportedly considered for the lead role of Zora Bennett, including Jennifer Lawrence, who ultimately turned the part down. Scarlett Johansson, by contrast, had been hoping to join the franchise for more than a decade and was already a devoted fan of the series. While Rebirth was still taking shape, she arranged a meeting with Spielberg herself and pitched the idea of joining the cast in some capacity. Once Edwards signed on as director and learned of her interest, he cast her as Zora almost immediately, and she subsequently worked directly with Cope to further shape the character. Jonathan Bailey was cast shortly after, reportedly at the suggestion of Universal executives who had been impressed by his performance in the 2024 film Wicked. Edwards personally cast Manuel Garcia Rulfo after seeing his work in an episode of the television series The Lincoln Lawyer, and he likewise cast Rupert Friend after being struck by a performance Friend gave in an episode of Homeland. Friend went on to collaborate with Quep to add further dimension to his character, Martin Krebs. Other performers who joined the cast around this time included Mahershala Ali, Luna Blaze, David Iacono, Audrina Miranda, and Bashir Sylvain. One notable near miss in casting involved Glenn Powell, who had previously voiced a character in the animated series Jurassic World Camp Cretaceous. Powell was reportedly in talks to play Dr. Henry Loomis, but ultimately declined the role, explaining publicly that he believed someone else would be able to bring more to the part than he could, and that recognizing when to step aside is sometimes the right call, even if it means passing on a job. John Mathieson was brought on as cinematographer. Edwards hoped to evoke Spielberg's own filmmaking style throughout the production and, for the first time in his career, chose to shoot the film on 35mm film stock in order to recapture the visual texture of the original 1993 movie. The production used Panaflex Millennium XL2 cameras paired with vintage C and E series anamorphic lenses from Panavision, supplemented by an Ariflex 235 camera for handheld work and a selection of Ingenio and Elite Zoom lenses. The E series lenses in particular were chosen for the cleaner image quality they produced, and scenes were composed in the 240 dogwood 1 widescreen aspect ratio. To simplify lighting logistics in remote filming locations, night scenes set in the jungle were largely achieved using day for night photography techniques rather than genuine nighttime shoots. Kodak's Vision 3 film stock was used throughout production and processed at Kodak's Film Lab in the United Kingdom, and the eventual digital intermediate color grade applied a vintage Kodak print emulation lookup table with only minimal additional correction in order to preserve the natural grain and color characteristics of the scanned film. Several countries were considered as filming locations to stand in for the fictional Ile Saint Hubert before Thailand was ultimately settled on, including Costa Rica, the Dominican Republic, Mauritius, and Panama. Once Edwards had been hired, he suggested Thailand as a location, having previously filmed The Creator there, and Spielberg and the producing team quickly signed off on the idea after concluding that the country's landscapes would suit the island setting well. James Klein, who had served as production designer on The Creator, reunited with Edwards to take on the same role for Rebirth, and Edwards pushed to complete as much filming on real locations as possible, rather than relying heavily on sets or green screens. Filming principal photography on Jurassic World Rebirth began in Thailand on June 13, 2024, under the working title Saga, with the Thailand leg of the shoot lasting roughly a month. Filming locations in the country included Khao Phanom Bencha National Park in Krabi Province, Kokradan Island within Hat Chao Mai National Park in Trang Province, and Ao Phang Nga National Park in Phang Nga Province. Sunset Beach on Kokradan was used specifically for the sequence depicting Duncan's boat crashing ashore on Ile Saint Hubert, while a beach bar scene set in Suriname, in which Zora meets with Duncan, was filmed at a small fishing village elsewhere in Thailand. The sequence involving the herd of Titanosaurus was filmed on an open field in Tab Prik, also located in Krabi province. Production designer James Klein's team ran into an unexpected obstacle while preparing this location. A drought had made it impossible to grow the tall grass the scene called for using conventional methods. So the production ultimately brought in a horticulturist from England who solved the problem by installing a dedicated irrigation system to get the grass to grow in time. Filming in Thailand more broadly was complicated by the presence of venomous water snakes and insects in the shooting locations, adding an additional layer of difficulty to an already demanding outdoor shoot. The choice to shoot on film also introduced its own logistical wrinkle, since the exposed footage had to be physically shipped to England for processing rather than reviewed instantly. Executive producer Dennis Stewart later recalled the anxiety of waiting several days at a time to learn whether the footage had survived the trip intact, since a lost shipment could have meant reshoots, delays, or losing actors who needed to move on to other commitments. According to Stewart, despite the nerve wracking wait each time, the production never actually lost a single reel to damage or loss in transit. Filming then moved to Malta Film Studios in Kolkara, Malta in July 2024. The Malta leg of production focused heavily on the boat attack sequences involving the Mosaurus. Some of the stunt work for these sequences was shot in water tanks constructed at the studio facility, while additional ocean footage was captured out on the nearby Mediterranean Sea. For the more complex shots, boats were mounted on hydraulic gimbals inside the tanks, built by special effects supervisor Neil Corbould, who had worked with Edwards on his previous films. Notably, most of these tank sequences were actually filmed with no water present at all, with the water itself added digitally during post production visual effects work. Edwards has acknowledged that filming the ocean set sequences proved to be genuinely difficult, and Scarlett Johansson described the experience of shooting on the rigs as physically grueling, recalling being suspended around 30 feet in the air on a platform that moved constantly while water cannons blasted her from below, all under relentless sun with no shade or relief. In August 2024, the production relocated once more, this time to London and Sky Studios Elstree in the United Kingdom for the remainder of principal photography. The abandoned InGen research facility, including its laboratory spaces and an extensive network of underground tunnels, was constructed across three separate sound stages at Sky Studios, and the laboratory set in particular ended up being the single most expensive set built for the entire film. Other major sets constructed at the studio included an artificial jungle environment, the gas station convenience store featured in the film's third act, and the interior sets for Duncan's boat and the ancient temple housing, the Quetzalcoatlus nest. A 70-foot cliff wall was also built at Sky Studios for the sequence in which Zora's team rappels down toward the temple. A waterfall scene in this sequence was added afterward through visual effects, using real footage of jog falls in the Shivamogga district of Karnataka, India, composited into the scene. Additionally, a museum sequence in the film was shot on location at the Old Royal Naval College in Greenwich, London. The film's tense river chase sequence, involving a pursuing Tyrannosaurus Rex, was filmed in two separate locations. The opening portion was shot at a flooded quarry back in Thailand, while the remainder of the sequence was completed in the United Kingdom at the Lee Valley White Water Centre in Hertfordshire, where practical rock formations on set were combined with digitally created landscaping to complete the environment. Several cast members took on physically demanding tasks themselves during filming. Manuel Garcia Rulfo performed a number of his own stunts, and both he and David Iacono learned scuba diving in order to shoot the film's underwater sequences. Rupert Friend, meanwhile, had to be suspended on a wire rig for depicting his character, Martin Krebs's death. One behind the scenes disagreement during production concerned the fate of Mahershala Ali's character, Duncan Kincaid. Duncan had originally been written to die at the hands of the Distortus Rex before the film's end. But once Ali was cast, executives at Universal grew concerned that killing off an actor of his stature might not sit well with audiences and push for the character to survive instead. Edwards and Ali both advocated for keeping Duncan's death as originally scripted and ultimately prevailed on that point. But Universal still asked the production to shoot an additional scene while still in Thailand, showing Duncan surviving, simply to have the option available in case a different ending was later chosen. In the end, Edward decided to incorporate this additional survival footage into the finished theatrical cut of the film. David Cobb was present on set in London during the final weeks of principal photography and remained readily reachable to Edwards by text message throughout the rest of the shoot. Edwards has said that he requested minor script rewrites on numerous occasions, sometimes only minutes before a scene was due to be filmed, and that Coeb was consistently responsive to these last minute requests. Principal photography officially wrapped on September 27, 2024, though a further round of pickup shots was filmed roughly 3 weeks later in New York City. Industrial Light and Magic, which had provided visual effects for previous entries in the franchise, returned once again to handle the creation of the film's dinosaurs and other prehistoric creatures. Because pre production had been so compressed, the crew on Rebirth did not have the time to make extensive use of animatronics in the way that the two preceding Jurassic World films had, representing a notable departure in approach. That said, practical elements were still used on set to help ground the actors' performances. Special effects artist John Nolan, who had also worked on Jurassic World Dominion, returned to construct practical dinosaur parts such as heads, limbs, and claws for use during filming. These practical pieces served mainly as lighting and eyeline references for the cast rather than being used in the finished shots themselves, and were subsequently replaced with fully digital dinosaur models during post production, since Edwards wanted to avoid visibly mixing practical and digital dinosaur elements on screen. Because of the shortened pre production window, ILM had only about 6 weeks to finalize the designs for the film's various dinosaurs, a fraction of the time usually allotted for this kind of work. Paleontologist Stephen L. Brusate, who had also consulted on Dominion, returned in the same capacity to advise on the film's depiction of prehistoric life. According to ILM visual effects supervisor David Vickery, Edwards made a deliberate choice not to include any feathered dinosaur designs in the film, reasoning that they tended to resemble oversized chickens rather than convincingly frightening creatures. Within the film's narrative, it suggested that public fascination with dinosaurs has waned considerably over time. Edwards has drawn a metaphorical parallel between this idea and broader shifts in the entertainment industry, comparing the declining novelty of dinosaurs within the story's world to the decline of movie theaters in the era of streaming platforms. He has described the film's mutant dinosaur storyline as a kind of oblique commentary on the challenge facing filmmakers today of finding new ways to make audiences excited about a familiar form of entertainment. The design of the film's signature new creature, the Distortus Rex, drew inspiration from two other iconic movie monsters, the xenomorphs of the Alien franchise and the rancors of the Star Wars film. Vickery has described the creature's bulbous, misshapen head as intended to evoke the impression that another animal had somehow been fused onto the Tyrannosaurus's body. According to Vickery, Edwards wanted audiences to feel a degree of sympathy for the creature in addition to fear, since its visible deformities suggest it is in genuine physical pain and burdened by its own mutated form. Edwards himself was closely involved in shaping the design of the Distortus Rex and specifically requested that the creature be given gorilla like arms and movement patterns. Another mutant creature introduced in the film, the flying mutodons, were conceived as a hybrid combining traits of a pterosaur with those of a velociraptor. Kopp has said the idea for the creature originated from a personal encounter he once had with a bat on his own porch. In the film's internal mythology, the Mutadons are framed as an early failed attempt by InGen at creating hybridized dinosaurs. The creature went through numerous design iterations at ILM, some of which explored more radical departures, such as multiple heads or unusual limb arrangements, as the effects team worked to strike a balance between plausible science fiction and visual believability. The final design for the Mutadons wasn't locked in until around the end of 2024, following roughly 9 months of iteration. To distinguish the Tyrannosaurus rex appearing in Rebirth from the versions seen in earlier films, the creature was given a redesign inspired by the stop motion dinosaur featured in the 1969 film The Valley of Gwangi. Vickery has described the resulting design as noticeably heavier, more muscular, and more bull like in its overall build compared to previous incarnations, while still retaining the recognizable silhouette of a classic Jurassic Park T Rex. The raft sequence involving this creature proved to be a particular technical challenge for ILM's artists, who had to work out convincingly how such a large animal would move while partially submerged underwater. Rebirth also marks the return of the Spinosaurus, a dinosaur that had previously appeared in Jurassic Park 3, 2001, and that Edwards has said he is personally a fan of. For this film, the Spinosaurus was substantially redesigned to reflect newer paleontological research, suggesting the animal was primarily semi aquatic in its natural behavior. Vickery has described the new design as featuring more powerful hind limbs, a considerably larger and broader tail, webbed feet, and the appearance of a shorter, more powerful neck achieved through added fatty deposits and extra skin folds. To help nail down the animal's design and movement, ILM's artists studied both crocodiles and grizzly bears for reference. The Mosasaurus likewise received an entirely new design for the film, and its size is depicted as fluctuating more dramatically over the course of the story than that of any other creature. An intentional choice made to heighten the sense of scale and awe surrounding the animal. Beyond these redesigned staples of the franchise, the film also brings back several other species that longtime fans of the series would recognize, including Apatosaurus, Ankylosaurus, Compsognathus, Dilophosaurus, Parasaurolophus, Pteranodon, and Quetzalcoatlus. As has been true of every film in the franchise to date, Velociraptor also makes an appearance, albeit in a comparatively brief scene, meant primarily to establish the greater threat posed by the newer Mutadons. The Velociraptor design used in Rebirth was itself updated, drawing inspiration from the raptors previously seen in Jurassic Park 3. Among the entirely new species introduced for the film are Titanosaurus and the small pterosaur Anorognathus. To help ILM's artists convincingly animate a Titanosaurus mating display sequence, the production studied nature, documentary footage of giraffes and swans engaging in similar courtship behaviors, and an actual elephant was brought onto the Thai filming location to walk through the tall grass field as a physical reference point for the visual effects team to study. One of the film's other prominent new dinosaurs, and arguably its most endearing addition, is Aquilops, the small horned dinosaur that becomes a companion to the character Isabella over the course of the story. For scenes involving this creature, the production built three separate on-set animatronics, each measuring just 18 inches in length and operated remotely by a team of puppeteers. The primary version of this animatronic was equipped with numerous motors capable of simulating lifelike behaviors such as breathing, blinking, and tail movement, and was used for the creature's close physical interactions with the cast. A second animatronic was built specifically for scenes in which characters needed to physically pick the creature up, and a third was used purely as a lighting reference on set. Thanks to their extensive use of 3D printed components, these puppets ended up weighing considerably less than animatronics of a comparable scale typically would in past productions. Post production by the end of 2024, Gareth Edwards had completed his first assembly cut of Jurassic World Rebirth. He had set himself the goal of keeping the finished film under 2 hours in length, and his initial cut came in just 1 minute short of that mark, not counting the closing credits. In pursuit of that runtime, Edwards trimmed roughly 5 minutes of footage from the film, though this material was ultimately restored at the request of Universal executives. Beyond that restored footage, three additional scenes were cut entirely from the theatrical release. Edwards was reportedly comfortable losing two of these scenes, but the third, an extended version of the gas station sequence, was one he was more reluctant to part with. He has described the excised material as leaning further into a sense of the characters being actively hunted, building tension around something approaching, but it was ultimately removed because it slowed the pacing of the film's third act, which had been written to move quickly. Edwards has credited Spielberg with giving him valuable advice during this stage of post production, encouraging him to trim sequences more aggressively than his instincts might otherwise suggest, on the theory that audiences who leave a film feeling just slightly unsatisfied are more likely to return for another viewing or another installment down the line. During post production, Edwards also briefly entertained the idea of having a Tyrannosaurus Rex appear in the film's climax to battle the Distortus Rex directly, inadvertently rescuing the human characters in the process. Other filmmakers working on the project talked him out of this idea, pointing out that it lacked originality, given that several previous installments in the franchise had already ended with dinosaur on dinosaur combat as their climactic beat. The finished film also contains numerous deliberate callbacks and Easter eggs referencing the original 1993 Jurassic Park. Notably, after viewing an early cut of the film, both Spielberg and Kopp reportedly asked that these references be stripped out entirely. Edwards ultimately managed to retain most of them, although one notable exception was the animated character Mr. DNA from the original film, who had been included in an early expository scene in Rebirth but was ultimately cut from the finished film. By March 2025, Edwards was working 7 days a week alongside ILM and film editor Jabez Olsen to finish the project in time for its planned release date. The completed film ultimately contains 1,515 individual visual effects shots, the highest total of any film in the Jurassic franchise to date. Industrial Light and Magic handled more than 1,000 of those shots itself, with the remainder split between other effects vendors, including important looking pirates and Midas. The film's post production work was completed in May 2025, leaving a comparatively narrow window before its theatrical debut the following month. Music Jurassic World Rebirth score was composed by Alexander Desplat, marking his second collaboration with director Gareth Edwards after previously scoring Godzilla in 2014. In taking on the project, Desplat effectively replaced Michael Giacchino, who had composed the scores for all three previous Jurassic World films. The score was recorded at the famed Abbey Road Studios in London, employing a 105-piece orchestra alongside a 60-piece choir to achieve a suitably grand sweeping sound. rather than starting entirely from scratch. Desplat's score incorporates musical themes originally written by John Williams for the first two Jurassic Park films, weaving the franchise's classic musical identity into the new score. In an unusual bit of on screen musical talent, actor Jonathan Bailey, who plays paleontologist Henry Loomis in the film, performed the clarinet solo heard in the score himself. The full soundtrack album was released by Backlot Music on July 2025, timed to coincide precisely with the film's release in the United States. Release theatrical promotional efforts for Jurassic World Rebirth began well over a year in advance of the film's release. The project's title, along with a pair of first look photographs from the production, was revealed publicly on August 29, 2024. From the outset, the film was marketed as a deliberate homage to the original 1993 Jurassic Park, with promotional messaging clearly aimed at longtime fans of that film specifically. The first full trailer arrived on February 5, 2025, following a rollout of individual film stills in the preceding weeks. Ben Travis, writing for Empire, felt the footage in the trailer was visually striking and evoked strong memories of the first Jurassic Park film. A 60-second television spot for the film was subsequently broadcast during Super Bowl LIX on February 9, 2025, giving the marketing campaign a major mainstream platform, and a second full trailer followed several months later on May 20, 2025. The marketing campaign extended well beyond traditional trailers and television spots. Toy manufacturers Mattel and Lego both produced dedicated lines of film based merchandise as part of the promotional push, and the studio struck additional marketing partnerships with convenience store chains, including 7-Eleven, along with its affiliated Speedway and Stripes brands, as well as with the collectibles company Funko. Professional basketball player Shai Gilgeous-Alexander also appeared in a television commercial for the film that aired during the 2025 NBA playoffs, extending the promotional campaign into sports broadcasting as well. Universal reportedly hoped that Scarlett Johansson herself would take part more directly in certain promotional activities, though she did ultimately appear in an online video created to help promote the Mattel toy line tied to the film. Jurassic World Rebirth held its official premiere on June 17, 2025, at the Odeon Lux Leicester Square Cinema in London, a venue frequently used for major studio premieres in the United Kingdom. Universal Pictures then released the film theatrically in the United States and Canada on July 2, 2025, timed deliberately to capture audience during the lucrative 4th of July holiday period. Home media following its theatrical run, Jurassic World Rebirth was made available for digital download purchase on August 5, 2025. It then arrived in physical formats on September 9, 2025, with releases on 4K, Ultra HD Blu ray, Standard Blu ray, and DVD all launching simultaneously. As part of an existing long term streaming arrangement between Universal and Amazon Prime Video, covering the studio's live action theatrical releases, Jurassic World Rebirth began streaming on the Peacock platform on October 30, 2025. Under the terms of this staggered distribution deal, the film was set to move over to Prime Video for a period covering the following 10 films in Universal's release slate, before eventually cycling back to Peacock for a final stretch covering four additional titles, reflecting the increasingly complex, multi platform nature of major studio streaming deals in this era. Reception box office Jurassic World Rebirth ultimately grossed approximate $339.6 million across the United States and Canada, combined with roughly $529.5 million from international markets, for a cumulative worldwide total of about $869.1 million. This result placed the film as the sixth highest grossing release of 2025 globally and the seventh highest grossing film of that year, specifically within the United States and Canadian market. In the lead up to release, industry trade publications offered varying projections for the film's opening performance. The Hollywood Reporter initially projected a 5-day domestic opening weekend in the range of $100 to $125 million, while Deadline Hollywood offered a somewhat higher estimate of $115 to $135 million. As the release date approached, Deadline Hollywood revised its outlook further, projecting a global opening weekend of around $260 million, alongside a domestic 5-day figure of $120 to $130 million. Just days before release, on July 5, 2025, projections had climbed again, with estimates suggesting the film could reach as much as $312 million worldwide over its 5-day opening weekend. Once the film actually opened, its performance tracked ahead of even these already elevated projections. The film earned $30.5 million on its opening day alone, prompting analysts to raise their 5-day domestic estimate to $133.5 million. The following day brought in an additional 25.3, pushing the projected opening weekend total up further to $137.5 million. On July 4th itself, the film added $26.3 million domestically, leading Deadline Hollywood to revise its 5-day estimate once more, this time to $141.2 million. The next day, July 5th, saw an additional $35.6 million in domestic earnings, which pushed Deadline's 5-day projection up yet again to $145.3 million. When the dust settled, the film had actually debuted to $147.8 million domestically across its full 5-day 4th of July holiday frame, comfortably topping the domestic box office for that period. This total included $92 million earned specifically over the traditional 3-day weekend portion of that frame, while the film's global total for the same 5-day period reached approximately $322.6 million. The film's momentum slowed considerably in its second weekend of release, during which it earned $40.3 million domestically, representing a 56.2% decline from its opening weekend. This drop was enough to knock the film out of the top spot at the domestic box office, with it finishing in second place behind the newly released Superman, which had opened that same weekend. Internationally, the film performed particularly well in certain key markets. In India, it set a new franchise record by posting the highest single day gross the series had ever achieved in that market without the benefit of any advanced premiere screenings. Beyond India, the film's other standout international markets included China, where it grossed roughly $41 million, the United Kingdom at approximately $16.6 million, Mexico at around $13.9 million, and Germany at about $7.6 million. By the conclusion of its first full week of release, the film had accumulated just under $410 million in worldwide earnings, and it went on to remain the top grossing film at the Chinese box office during its second weekend there as well, adding a further $11.1 million during that frame. Critical response Jurassic World Rebirth received a mixed critical reception overall, reflected clearly in its aggregate review scores. On the review aggregation site, Rotten Tomatoes, the film held a 50% approval rating based on 402 collected critic reviews at the time of its release. The site's consensus summary characterized the film as returning to the franchise's fundamentals through energetic set pieces and familiar genre tropes, suggesting that while it did not meaningfully advance the series creatively, it did succeed in restoring some of what had historically made the franchise reliable and enjoyable for audiences. On Metacritic, which calculates a weighted average score from a pool of professional critics, the film received a score of 50 out of 100 based on 55 reviews, a figure the site categorizes as indicating mixed or average reviews overall. Audiences surveyed by CinemaScore, meanwhile, awarded the film an average grade of B on the service's A plus to F scale, suggesting a more favorably disposed reception among general movie going audiences than among professional critics. Early reactions to the film, following its first press and premiere screenings, were themselves notably mixed, setting the tone for the more varied reviews that would follow closer to the film's wide release. Peter DeBruge, writing for Variety, felt that Rebirth offered essentially an updated take on the same basic thrill ride Spielberg had delivered more than 3 decades earlier, and argued that the film did not feel essential to the franchise's broader mythology, nor did it point clearly toward where the series might go from here.